Hello, everyone. I was about to go on one of my evening walks, but I promised you I was going to talk about this. And if you read the my community post on this topic, which I will link down in the description of the video, you will have the background to this video. But I did promise you all, if you read my community post, and the vast majority of you are enjoying the community post, but the message this evening for you. And this is not supposed to be a motivational message. It's really just me sharing uh, a message about things that bother me that I keep hearing from young people. So this is a message for young people, but especially, by the way, the gentlemen of Generation Z, Gen Z. Women too can listen to it, but I'm saying like I hear these complaints mostly from the men, from the guys in general. But we have to speak plainly. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not a victim. You are not meant to be defective cogs in the machinery of a culture that has long since ceased to honor the soul of a person. In fact, I'm one of those people. There's a lot of complaints about you young people. A lot. But many of the people who complain about you, they actually don't understand you. I do because I work with you. You see, and that's why you very rarely are you going to get the kind of messaging that I give you from a position of not only knowledge but honesty. Many people today are knowledgeable about you, about your generation, but they are not honest. I am honest. I don't think that everything is lost. I actually think that you are awake, believe it or not, in many areas. I just think that you are ineffective when it comes to taking certain actions in your own life, in your own lives, and the people around you. But really, what is often called laziness today is really, in truth, it's the last flicker of a deeply buried instinct, the sacred and godly instinct of our ancestors, at least in the European context, in the Western context, to reject serfdom in all its guises. And if you look at the history of Europe and America, North America specifically, because I know there's a lot of Latin Americans who say that, oh, we're American too. I'm talking about North America in this video specifically because I cannot speak about South America because I'm not as familiar with it. I cannot. But our Northern European ancestors were very much freedom minded. We come from a tradition of freedom and rightful rebellion against tyranny. But I want to open your eyes to something that you have perhaps felt in your bones, but you never had the words to say because you've been told from the very beginning of your consciousness that you have to live to work. You have to hustle. You have to grind. You have to be productive. But as I said in my community post, productive for whom? Productive for what? Think about that. For the past about 200 years, that has been the message that has been inculcated, instilled in so many of all of us in some way or another. You were not born to be a gear. You were born to be, to contemplate, to build, not just with your hands, not necessarily with your hands, but with your soul, to shape not just the matter around you, but meaning. There was a time, not so long ago, when a young man was not what was was not measured by not by how many hours he could chain himself to a desk or clock into a factory. But there was a time, and let me say this carefully, when the greatest of men did not work in the modern sense at all. They lived, they read, they debated, they walked the woods either in solitude, maybe with only a psalter and their thoughts, or in some expedition with their close friends. That is their reality. There was a time, and not that long ago, when men were not judged by how many emails they replied to before lunch or how fast they could sell their soul for a paycheck. There was a time when people did not work in the way we have been taught to worship, and we need to break free from the false messaging. Most of what you have been taught is a lie. And those men, they existed, they observed, they talked about things that then they sat in the shade for an hour or more to think about it. They were not racing towards some LinkedIn badge of honor. They were busy doing what most won't do, nothing, and doing it well. I'm often very happy to tell people when they say, "How'd you spend your day? What work did you do?" Nothing at all. Nothing. Just in prayer, serving my Lord. That's all you need. Look at our very own. When I say our, I'm referring to mathematicians. Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton didn't work. He pondered. He sat alone for hours in total silence. Sometimes, if you read the biographies, he forgot meals. He skipped meals. He let his house grow filthy and barely bothering to dress properly as was considered back in those days. There's nothing wrong with a little dust in your room or a lot of dust. I have a lot of dust in this house is over 100 years old. Old Southern home. Praise God that I have it. Thank God that God has been so generous with me. He wasn't employed, Isaac Newton, by a corporation. He wasn't building a portfolio. He was staring at the wall, maybe, I don't know, sometimes hours. He thought about light, gravity, and God. He was a man of God. And guess what? He made history. He inherited a small amount of land from his family. He lived frugally. Some of you young people, you don't live frugally. Your habits are outrageous. That's why you're so unhappy. And he spent most of his early life doing what most people today would call wasting time. No job, no deadlines, just reflection, observation, and obsession. He had breakthroughs, the calculus, the optics, the laws of motion. Those didn't come from some boardroom brainstorm session surrounded by incompetent hires. They came from long, long periods of being alone, solitary walks, sitting under trees. You all know the story, like the apple tree, and weeks of quiet reading. During the plague years, there was a plague similar to COVID recently when everyone else panicked and he retreated. That was his so-called the year of wonders. You call that unemployed? I mean, the man basically ghosted society and invented the calculus. But if that's not enough for you, you have another great mathematician, Leibniz. He didn't grind either. He wrote letters. He read old manuscripts. He drew up machines that no one else could build and got paid by princes to sit in libraries and think, if that's what you call failure, sign me up. In every era, there has been a crew of men who just opted out. They did not chase titles. They did not chase clout. They were not lazy. They just knew what true freedom was. And instead of pretending to love the grind, they stayed in their lane. I told you that a couple days ago. Stay in your lane. They did not clock in and they did not apologize. They carved out a quiet kind of greatness, not with resumes. I don't ever recall, I might be wrong, but I don't ever recall writing a resume. Why would I? But they were there. Their greatness was in their presence itself. And they understood, even back then, that a man who does not own his time owns nothing at all. If you are a W-2 employee, you are not a truly free person. We can cross the ocean now to Virginia. This is the land I call home currently. I am on the soil where Thomas Jefferson walked and built. He didn't build factories or hedge funds, or he built ideas and ideals. Look at the University of Virginia, UVA. It was founded by Jefferson, but it was never meant to be a pipeline into soulless commerce. UVA was a crucible for men of reason and refinement, its godlessness notwithstanding. And some of you young people, you watch me from Charlottesville, for example. I know that for a fact. You've got a lot of history at UVA for Jefferson. There were moments of a lot of rowdiness in the 19th century, by the way. Some of your predecessors were were quite rowdy, but the professors were also men of character who suffered no fools either. But I'd sooner take that generation of men who fought each other than I would the weaklings that we see today. The Southern gentleman, by the way, those of you who are interested in history, was not trained to clock in. He was trained to stand tall, to understand, to have a sense of history, philosophy. You studied philosophy, pure mathematics, classical languages like ancient Greek and Latin. The Southern gentleman was formed in virtue and in stewardship. And when he worked, and yes, he did work in the good sense of the word, it was never as a servant of some economic abstraction. The Southern gentleman worked for land, for family, for honor, for God. So where did that vision go? Who stole it? You get later on, starting in the 1840s, the rise of industrial capitalism. Millions of people. This is when, between the 1840s and then up to the current time, the countryside in America started to empty out. You later on, you get technocratic. By the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century, you get technocratic progressivism. And that is the vision of the man as a what you have today is mostly the progressive vision. But this vision that I have of the man as a thinker, a moral actor, a gentleman of leisure and faith, that died. And it was replaced by a new idol, the economic man, the consumer, the wage earner, the taxpayer, the consumer. Everything we do today is a product of that kind of thinking. So productivity and consumption, that became the new piety. Work in and of itself became the new morality. No longer do we ask what is good, but we ask what is efficient or productive. Our ancestors never would have dreamed to ask about something like that. You worked because you had to work. You had to, for example, if you worked the land, it was for your family. But it was not tied to a broader system as it is today. And so today we raise our young men. Many of you have misplaced ambition. We tell them that their worth lies in how many professional badges or degrees they've collected, or how many hours they've spent at a desk, or how few. It's ironic, but people say today how few vacation days they've taken, as if having holidays were a bad thing. That's not what our ancestors felt. And you feel tired because you were never meant to live like this. The exhaustion and the loneliness that you feel is not weakness, it is really a rebellion. You are protesting against a system that wants you broken in spirit and broken in body. But I offer you another path. And it's not really me. God offers you another path. It's not laziness. It's not sloth. But it's a restoration of the old order. It is the return of the contemplative man, the rooted man, the man who would spend his mornings reading in prayer St. Augustine, and spend your evening in Vespers and your afternoons walking the fields or sipping coffee or wine, why not, with fellow men of goodwill, even some whiskey. Oh, I know some of you in the audience, I know some of you fundamental Baptists, you don't agree with me on alcohol. I know that. And I respect your view. I really do. Alcohol is not for everyone. But I say to you, with all the clarity of tradition, you are not here to serve a machine. The machine, in any case, must serve you or be cast aside. Now, all of this sounds very good, but how does this translate into practical terms? What does it mean practically? Because remember, we said on this channel, I don't speak in platitudes only. I try to offer realistic solutions. So you have to think about, what implication does this all have? So in practical terms, what does this all mean? First, you have to reclaim your time. You have to start by refusing to feel guilt for wanting space, for wanting silence, for wanting to just be. In the second place, you have to build a circle. I would prefer to call it a brotherhood. If you find even just 2 or 3 other men who get it, uh, it will be a lot easier. People who refuse to live as economic cannon fodder, especially for this regime, for modernistic regimes. The third thing is you have to cultivate beauty. That includes reading the Bible, reading the great works of Western literature, maybe learn an ancient language, dress well, not because of some job interview, but because you are a person, in this case, a man or a woman. You are made as a Christian in the image of God. And you are to respect your body is a temple of God. So be respectful of that. The fourth thing is you can seek meaningful labor, yes, but on your terms. It could be craftsmanship. It could be I do tutoring, but I'm not a W-2 employee. You could do content creation, or you can do farming, writing, theology. You have to let your work reflect your soul, not your desperation. This is what has been lost on the modern mind. This is not a message to be lazy, but it is a message to empower yourselves in the service and the will of God. And the fifth thing, and most importantly, is to renew your faith. You have to return to God. You have to read up on the lives of the saints of our faith. You have to understand what they refused to do, not just what they did. And a lot of you are asking me the question at this point. You're probably saying, but how do I pay my bills? We're going to talk about that in a moment. So, in many cases, they will call you useless if you don't rush to serve their idols. Let them. As I said in my community post, it's better to be useless to Babylon than useful to its architects. The saints, the Christian saints, did not work to enrich apostate empires. They withdrew. They contemplated. They bore witness. And in doing so, they shattered tyrannies. Do not be ashamed if you find yourself idle in the eyes of the world. And when I say the world, I mean the non-Christian world. Perhaps you were not born for the economy, but for the altar. Perhaps you were not made to be efficient, but to be faithful. The hour is late, the system is hollow, and the last thing we need is another obedient worker. And to pay your bills, well, this is exactly the tragedy. It's not a justification of the system, it is evidence of its failure. You see, a righteous order, a Christian order, would not reduce man to a beast of burden, scrambling to survive while his soul decays. The fact that survival now depends on obedience to economic mechanisms rather than on faith, land, kin, or providence, that is proof that society has been inverted. Do you think your ancestors lived like this? Come on. Do you think that your ancestors living in the farms were hounded from dawn to dusk by the fear of unpaid rent and medical debt? There was no such thing. No, because they lived within households, extended families, small communities, and under moral economies where charity was not a tax write-off, but a sacred duty. The family was strong. The church was central. And the land itself was not just owned, but it belonged to the people. And I don't say that in a stupid communist socialist way. I'm talking about there were uh, reciprocal obligations between the gentry and the peasants. But today you're told that if you stop running, you'll die. But perhaps it's the very race that is killing you. So, yes, in this broken world, many have to work. But that's not the same thing as worshiping work. You may have to labor temporarily, but never forget that it is a prison. It is a system of modernity. It is not a blessing, not in the biblical sense. It is not the same thing. And you need to stop confusing the two things. Yes, God commands us to work, but that's not the same thing as being a W 2 employee in America in 2025. So the first step towards your freedom is to name your chains. Oh, but Mr. Cromwell, if I don't work, I will not be able to pay the bills. Well, that's exactly how they trap you, don't they? That is by design. You see, the system is not broken, it's actually built this way. They don't want you to be free. They want you to be too tired, too broke, and too scared to resist. They want you running on the treadmill until your spirit snaps. They want you isolated, humiliated. When I say they, I mean the system. Excuse me. And they want you too exhausted and humiliated to ask questions. They don't care if you are educated or if you're noble or even if you're righteous, God forbid. They only care if you are profitable. So, what do? You withdraw your consent. You minimize your dependency. If it means sharing housing, so be it. If it means growing food, if you can, so be it. Trade with your brothers. Lean on family if you haven't. Cut every bill that is not essential. Let's face it, the vast majority of the things you have are you don't need. Starve the machine. Deny it your energy. And that's not laziness, that's rebellion in the positive sense. You see, the modern world wants you to believe, especially in America, not other countries, but especially in America, since we've been told lies, that being productive is the highest good. But all that really means is helping people who really hate you get richer while you decay inside. Don't help them. Do not play their games. You do not owe the system your soul just because it holds the keys to an apartment or a house that you think you are entitled to. Let's get to that because we have to talk about some of the common complaints from Gen Z and others, but Gen Z is the one that complains the most about it because they are the most affected in some way. And yes, it's true. Many young men today and young women, you can't afford your own place. I've heard that all the time. I can't afford my own place. You can't even afford nights out, baby. Many of you young men don't have wives or families or girlfriends, but that doesn't make you a failure. It makes you free in ways that your critics will not understand. You see, not every man was made to be married. I'm not married. Some of you don't know that, but I say it all the time. God did not make Jesus Christ wasn't married. Neither were the apostles. Not every single man on earth is made to be married. Not all of us are marriage material. We are made, some of us are made to expand the mission of God. The world has stripped us of luxury, but in doing so, it accidentally handed us something older, purer. Not because they wanted to, but because it's inevitable. We have to return to simplicity. A return to the cold water, the plain meals, the silence. A return to a brotherhood that is not built on status, but on shared restraint. You don't need a condo. You don't need a girlfriend if you were not born for that. You don't need brunch plans to live with dignity. You need backbone. You need a prayer life. You need a code. You need the modern world may mock a man who has little, but tradition knows that a man who owns nothing cannot be bought. And that, my friends, is power. That is the real power. You are a lot more powerful than you think. Yes, the rent is I keep hearing this from my, oh, the rent is so high, it's insane. I cannot afford a home. I can't find a date or even a quiet dinner that doesn't cost half a paycheck. But you see, this is what you do not understand. Comfort, especially not the comfort that you think is comfort, was never promised to men. Not real men. You were not born into a kingdom, you were dropped into a wilderness. And that's not a curse, that's a calling. You don't need more money, you need fewer needs. You don't need a girlfriend. If God hasn't given it to you, then it's for a reason. You might need discipline, brothers, uh, and maybe, I don't know, more prayer. Do you want a solution? Well, here it is. Embrace limits. Make stillness your protest. Make self denial your strength. Eat little. Pray deep. Speak rarely unless spoken to, unless you want to speak. Some of us were made to speak more. I'm an example of that. Train your body. Guard your soul. The world, who cares what the world, I mean, I don't care what modern people think. They may call that failure. I don't know. I don't listen to them. I listen to what God says, but not what some random weirdo has to say. We call that formation. You're not stuck, you're being forged. And you have to think about it that way. So just think, pray, and then act. But never act for the machine. You have to become a man of dignified leisure, a man of high thought, a man of deep faith. Your birthright is not productivity, it is peace. May the Lord bless you all. Thank you for listening to me. And if this spoke to you, please subscribe. Not to join a trend, but to join. We really are a community here. We really are a brotherhood. We're not selling hustle here. We're building a sanctuary uh, that is an alternative to this apostate world. May God bless you all and keep you. Have a good night. I hope you all take a walk this evening, uh, and you think about the things that we have spoken about. God bless.